Hello, everyone. Well, where to begin? A lady named Sylvia, who lives in Germany, who is on my list, receives my information and follows my work to a degree, contacted Grand Commander of the Templars, Michael Henry Dunn, who's also here in Crestone. And of course, as most of you know, I am a Templar as well and have the Priory of the White Stone, as it says right here. And she told him that she felt guided to ask the Templars to help her. She has, for about 2 years now, been what she calls awake. And during that time, she has been called and focused upon Mount Utenberg in Austria, which is, if you will Google it, you will find is a very mysterious mountain. It's almost like reading about the San Luis Valley, and because it's so mysterious and has UFO sightings and all kinds of things, and it has a history of myths and legends. Some of them kind of dark legends, and some of them light legends, and all kinds of things. But her focus was feeling that there was an energy connected to the Grail in this mountain that had been sequestered there for a long time, and that it needed to be taken out of the mountain and put somewhere else. She felt that she was being called to call it out of the mountain, to bring it through herself, but then where? She didn't know where to send it. And she was guided to contact the Templars. So Michael Dunn got a hold of me on this, and I checked with Thoth, and he verified from my Thothic perspective that indeed there was this energy in the mountain that was ready to be transferred. So and that the Templars were a part of that once she drew it forth, that we would be carrying it on from there. So I asked where it was to be placed, and I received Mount Blanca, which is the rock star mountain of the rock star, get it? Sorry, I'm being silly. Of this valley, of the San Luis Valley. And so those called this energy, this presence, the logos of the Grail. Now, again, as I've said before with my videos and my work, remember that he's attempting to describe something to us that's very difficult to describe without a huge amount of information on quantum science and more than we really want to know at this time. We're just trying to focus on a particular thing. And so in such instances, which is most of the time, he gives me, like very symbolic terms, like the term Grail. He uses that for many aspects of what Lord Melchizedek brought to Earth through the guardian planet Venus back in Lemuria. It's an energy, it's an expression, it is a quantum field of realization. But we understand it primarily historically through the Grail legends. And of course, there, according to Thoth, there really was the King Arthur and the Guinevere and all of that. Their names were slightly different. But the legend, the mythos, was attached to that story because Arthur was probably the last bona fide Grail king carrying the Melchizedek lineage forward. So he uses that term to describe many things that historians certainly wouldn't connect to the Grail, or religious groups wouldn't connect to the Grail. But Thoth does, because he's following the thread of the original quantum energy field that was brought to this earth by Melchizedek. And so we have the Grail logos. Well, logos is not logo. Logos is the word, the holy word in this sense. So we have a holy word of the Grail, a vibration that expresses the entire field of what this represents. And that expression is knowledge. It's wisdom. Well, wisdom comes, I will strike the word wisdom. It's knowledge personified in an internal tone, a vibration. But it's also power, because once one receives the logos, one receives the ability to expand the senses, the awareness. Now, the reason I'm mentioning the word power is because the archonic energies, and I don't want to say the archons in a way, I mean, because that indicates that there are archons are actual beings. And I know a lot of people out there believe that, and it's been perpetuated. And it's a fine line to draw, granted, but archonic, from the Thoth perspective, archonic in the old Bible and the Gnostic Gospels and all of this, that's where the word comes from, really is associating with an energy field. Again, an energy. He refers to it as Thoth refers to it as the archonic cloud. And I used to think that, well, when he first gave me this term, which wasn't that long ago, usually I'm basing my material, what I'm saying now, on material I wrote, in the 70s and 80s and 90s. But in this instance, I only received this, 2 years ago, about the archons. Because I went to him about it. I said, well, people are saying archon this, archon that. What is this, And so that's when he introduced me to the archonic cloud. And I thought at the time he meant, like a fog or something out in outer space, like a celestial, a celestial fog or something of stars. But no, I realized later, he was referring to a symbolically again, like we have a computer cloud that we store things in, that's off of the grid of the hard drive of the computer. Well, this is what he means by the archonic cloud. It's a dense storage. It attracts and stores fear, anxiety, hatred, and it perpetuates it. There's a long story about that, and we're not going to get into it here. I probably should do a video just especially on that. But right now, just know that there's some forces that perpetuate this energy in this cloud. And they can attach, it can attach to individuals. So those individuals you could call archons, I guess, but Thoth likes to keep away from saying they're evil entities, more so that there's an evil energy, if you want to use the word evil, that can attach to entities. And the difference, the fine line difference is that the entities can be cleared of that. If you want to call it what is that word? I can't even think of it now. I'm not going to try. It's too early in the morning. But they can be exercised. That's the word I was looking for. The minute I dropped it, I got it. It can be exorcised from them. They can be transmuted. They can be taken away from them. And if you think of an evil entity, well, he's an evil entity. That's it. You can't go anywhere with that. You got an evil entity. But if you have a being that has a quote unquote evil energy that is attached to that being because they have opened up to it or whatever, I'm sure everything has its history. Then there's a way to resolve that, So anyway, I'm going off in a long direction in another way. So we'll get back here to our Grail logos. But the reason I brought that up about the archons is because the archons would really, or the archonic energy imbued in certain entities, which will, for the sake of space of time, called archonic personages right now, would really like to get a hold of such things. Just like Hitler was fascinated with anything and they say that Hitler really was focused on Gutenberg, really focused on it. He knew someone was in there and he wanted it. So any soul that's archonically endowed would be, and they were aware of Gutenberg and what was in there, would want it. But the irony of it is that even they can't have it. I mean, it's a vibration that they can't apprehend because they're not in that vibration. So it seems like they would finally get that. They would finally understand that. But again, it's a long story why they don't. So we're not going to go there. But the point is, Sylvia was feeling that Gutenberg was being compromised in some way, and that this Grail energy needed to come out of that mountain and be placed elsewhere. So from the Thothic perspective, back to my realm, this was indeed true. And there are a lot of facets to that I don't even know at this time, and maybe I don't need to know. Everything is not a need to know. There's so much that if you needed to know it all, you just explode. Sometimes I feel that way. So much is coming in, So, and I was trying to get, well, I'll get to that in a moment. So the next step. So we have the energy transfer that needed to be accomplished really quickly. And for this energy this Grail, logos of the Grail logos, to be transferred to Gutenberg into Mount Blanca. So let me see what stage I'm in here. Okay, so because there's so much, I don't want to get out of order, and my mind is generally out of order. So I have to be very careful with all of this, or I'll just quantum leap all over the energy field. Okay, so the next step. So when I went to look at this, so I was guided to do with those, I saw that there was a dweller crystal skull in Gutenberg that was holding the Grail logos within it. It was its crucible, like the Grail cup, so to speak. And that this crystal skull was to be transferred with it. You weren't to separate it. This was a package deal into Mount Blanca. So we already have in Crest in the Stone here, we already have Keeper of the Way crystal skull in there. And in a way, we have the White Queen now. She's never left her mountain in Kauai, Waialeale, but she has been holographically projected to her kind of partner in this situation, the Keeper of the Way. So they're literally together. Keeper of the Way really there. And her projection, her holographic projection, since I moved here and moved back and brought the Grail Queen hosting skull back with me, well, she has been projected into the mountain with him. But physically, or subtle physically, however these skulls exist, she's still in Waialeale. So our our task then was to not only bring the logos into Mount Blanca, but its container, its Merkaba, I guess you could say, this Dweller Skull. And I said, well, what is this? What is this Dweller Skull? What we can call it? Give me some information on this. And I received that it was the Templar Skull. Okay, well, I had written about a lot of some different names of skulls that from the Dwellers way back in 1980. Actually, it was in the 80s that I was told about the Dweller crystal skulls, but it was in 1990, the year 1990, that the Templar skull was mentioned to me. I remembered that, but I had to go back, and I didn't even know which issue of Temple Drawers it was in. But of course, thanks to Evernote, I was able to find it very quickly, and there was mention of the Templar skull. Now, I didn't remember anything about it. I just remembered the name, Templar Skull. Okay. And I went and looked it up. Well, to make a long story short, the Templar Skull is that of John Martinus, and that is the only child, and it is the son of Mary Magdalene and Yeshua. Now, remember, when we're dealing with the Dweller crystal skulls, it's not like the head of John Martinus turned into crystal. It's that once he passed, or as he was leaving, he was his skull was reformed into crystal. In other words, it's not the skull, his actual skull, but a duplicate was created of the energy of that skull and all the brain signals of that skull were formed into crystal. That's the way the Dweller process works. Now, according to what I was reading in my old 1990 Temple Doors issue, and I'd forgotten this, the actual body of John Martinus, like Torhanna in the tour of Glastonbury, and like these ancient kings underneath Lake Meoris and a few other places, this is not an unusual process. His body was placed into stasis, into holding, so to speak, so that it is in a sarcophagus somewhere beneath Glastonbury. And of course, Torhanna is in the tour there. But the skull has been turned. There is a crystal skull. I believe there's this crystal skull of Torhanna too, but I'm not sure. In any case, oh yes, of course there is. Duh. There is, because that's the Isis, and I have the hosting skull of Isis. So it is, Isis was Torhanna. So in that sense, there is a skull, but it's not of Isis and it's not of Torhanna. It's of the original soul that was all of those, and it was originally, and it finally was Mary, Mother of Mary, but not Torhanna herself. See, this is where it gets really confusing, because you have a soul that's passing through all these lifetimes. So that soul may have had a crystal skull, a Dweller skull, way back on its timeline. But then it could have another one somewhere else on its timeline. What if there may be an actual crystal skull of Torhanna? So then you would have the original crystal skull, and you would have the skull of Torhanna on the same timeline, the same soul, but in different points of register. So this gets really, really complicated, but there's only 72, at least that's what I've been told. So we're going to run out of numbers here if it keeps going. But anyway, so where was I? So John Martinus. Okay, we're back to John Martinus. His crystal skull is the Templar skull, and it is in Utenberg. Not in Glastonbury, but in Utenberg, or was. So we went through this process, which we have done. So now that skull carrying the Grail logos, and so fitting that it would be that. But we have another complication here. Thoth, the soul of Thoth, was the soul of John Martinus. Now, there is a crystal skull for the entity Thoth, before he was Thoth, that we're working with. And I have a hosting skull on the altar that represents the soul that was at one point, that was the soul of the being, the soul of Thoth, but it wasn't the entity of Thoth. Okay, are you still with me? So, in any case, this soul of Thoth was also the soul of John Martinus. So now we have a crystal skull that is John Martinus, but it's also the lineage of Thoth. It was from the soul of Thoth. So we that night, as I received all this information, my head was buzzing. Before the night, just before I went to bed, I was told by Thoth to get a crystal, a contemporary hosting skull for this Templar skull. And I already had so many skulls on my table, I didn't know where I was going to put it. But okay, so I went to eBay because it's the only place I can afford these. And I was looking through skulls and I was getting no. And there were some really pretty skulls that were it had to be under $200. And I was getting no's. And I was just about to give up. It was like, well, maybe I'm not supposed to do this. Maybe I got this wrong, little doubts coming into my brain. And finally one appeared on the screen and it was, yes, absolutely, this is it. And it was an elongated crystal skull, an elongated one. And I'm going, John Martinus had an elongated skull? I don't think so. And then Thoth came through and said, no, but Paraquanthus does. And it's like, oh my God, who's Paraquanthus? I was beginning to get a little stressed at this point. And he showed me this being that looked pretty human, except he had an elongated skull, and he was literally in a starship. And I said, but who is this? And he said, this is a fifth, I was to learn a fifth dimensional aspect of myself. Thoth, the soul Thoth. Okay, so we have Thoth, we have Paraquanthus, that is in a fifth dimensional realm, and we have John Martinus, all Thothic beings, same soul. And I said, well, where does Paraquanthus fit into this? And he said, now this is the punchline here, when the skull of the Templar skull is transferred into Mount Blanca, it will go through a gestation period, I believe was what he used, where the crystal skull, the dweller crystal skull, will, the template within that skull, there's an energy signature within that skull, and all the brain synapses and everything that are registered in that skull of John Martinus will merge with Paraquanthus's brain mapping. Let's call it brain mapping. That's what I'm getting right now. So the brain mapping in the crystal skull of John Martinus will merge with the brain mapping in Paraquanthus's skull, physical skull, because he doesn't have a crystal skull. Those two will come together and it will reform the crystal skull into an elongated skull, so it receives the fifth frequency dynamics. And of course, the Grail logos is going to be affected by that because it's housed within that skull. So I ordered the skull and it'll be here in a few weeks. But we were to continue with the actual transfer. So Sylvia was going to be, she had to get there. She wasn't even in Austria. She's in Germany. So she's going to go to Mount Utenberg in Austria. And she would climb the mountain and be there at 10 p.m. at night to perform this service. Now, this is cold out there still. She's not on top of the mountain, but on the mountain. And she would be doing what she felt guided to do. So at that time, Michael Dunn, myself, Edie Cooper, William Bueller of the Priory Ark of Ascension here in Crestone, and my friend who happened to be visiting at the time, who's going to be moving here to Crestone, may even become a Templar. Her name is Patricia. She would be here with us as well. And at 2 o'clock, and this was yesterday. Yesterday is, what day was yesterday? Saturday, March 31st, 2018. So at 2 p.m., we started the process here. Sylvie was on the mountain, and she was in communication with me through the Facebook personal messaging. And it only took a few moments, and the transfer was made. We saw some things. She saw some things. It was interesting that Edie and I saw the very same thing, something exactly similar. I was seeing it, and then she started speaking about it. So all of this took place, and we were all together. Michael, myself, and Bill, and Edie, and Patricia. We were gathered in my home here in front of the Christus Saphara, the Christic altar. So we had anointed ourselves with the sacred elixir before we began the process. It was so simple, easy, and quick. However, the day before, not the day before, it was Tuesday of that same week, the prior of the Ark of Ascension gathered with their synergy group, 5 or 6 people, and Michael and I were on Zoom with them. It was a snowy day, so we stayed at home, but we Zoomed in over just a few streets away to the gathering. We don't usually attend, but we did it this time for this special occasion because they were all going to be working with a pre-sin, so to speak, a pre-situation of the transfer. It's like they were working with the transfer on another level, on an etheric level. And then the physical part was done in just moments in the next few days by Sylvia and all of us. So what they went through was about an hour and a half of work with it. And the individuals had different experiences. The energy was moved not just instantly, like it seemed for us later, yesterday. But for the synergy group, it went through different points on the planet to get to us, mostly places in the United States. It was like from the Great Lakes to this point, to that point, to that point. The energy was just filtering through all these major points in the continental U.S., and then it arrived here in the valley. So it was as if it had already been transferred by the time we did the work with Sylvia. But it wasn't that. It was like it had already been transferred, but on another dimension, another level. And then when Sylvia and all of us did it late yesterday, all we had to do was ground it to the physical and just bring it through. So that's why our work was so simple, and their work was a lot more complex on Tuesday, the synergy group. So where does that leave us now? We have a 3-day period, which is actually concluding some point today, according to what I received, where the Templar Skull is being reformed with the Paraquanthus energy, become elongated. So I want to read you a little bit more about this 5th dimensional thing, because in understanding what that's about. So on Osiris Arising, here's an article I posted, well over, I guess, at least a year ago. Longer, it would be over a year ago. Fifth, I can't say it. 5th frequency beings. It's a tongue twister. Okay, so I'm going to skip down a little bit because it's talking about a particular one here. We don't need to address that, so we're going to go down here. So what is an FFB, a fifth frequency being. Genetically, a pairing of 3 DNA strands, which we humans all possess, with 2 that are pure frequency. These 2 strands are waveform frequency patterns only, developed through brain impulse. The FFBs have a pineal gland containing a unique substance that creates a specific type of crystal array. This array sends the 2-strand pure frequencies, which face match with the physical 3 strands. The result is a 5-fold frequency output from the combo. As an FFB, the individual can be totally active in its 5th frequency or not. Those who became 5th frequency through crossbreeding with humans may be less activated. Full activation means being able to move interdimensionally in a body that is still quite physical as we understand it. The Dweller Crystal Skull of Osalala, this woman that we're talking about here, saying is still in Lake Titicaca in a chamber, a vast cavern area below the plateau. And it goes on about that. So this is, just some pictures of some actual elongated skulls. Now, of course, in later periods of time, people wanted to look like that because they had the 5th frequency beings among them, and they had interbred with them, so they're having some children that had elongated skulls like that. And others said, hey, we want to have that too because they're special beings, and in memory of them or to live alongside them, we're going to reform our skulls. So they deformed the skulls, and they got skulls that looked like that. However, the actual 5th frequency skulls that are among us, people that were born that way, not deformed their skulls, they're now doing genetic testing on them, and they're finding they are unique. They were born that way. They didn't reform their skulls, and they can tell even by this cranium. Experts that know how to look at skulls can tell that they weren't reformed, but they were naturally born that way. So science proves out at least that these beings actually did exist. So that's on that. I just wanted to share that with you because we're going to be working with this newly formed Templar skull. And at this time, I'm still going to call it a Templar skull. I'm not getting any reason not to at this point. Before we go any further, I want to introduce you to Mount Utenberg. Here it is. This is a beautiful mountain in Austria. And I believe Uten means under. So it is talking about something being under it or in it, And so then we have also, I'm just going to switch over here and give you a look at, of course, many of you have seen it already, but this is Mount Blanca, which is right up against the sand dunes. And according to Thoth, Mount Blanca goes under the sand dunes as well. So this takes us to the next part of the story. Mount Blanca is said to be one of the portals of emergence by the Hopis and other tribes as well. I can't remember which indigenous tribes also claim it as such. And it is rampant with UFO sightings. Of course, the whole valley is, but Mount Blanc, as I said, is the rock star of the valley. Challenger is not. Challenger, crest in the stone. People in Crestone think it's amazing mountain, but it's not really recognized that way. It's sort of, the secret place. So it has its things going on, but Mount Blanca is the one that everybody recognizes. And historically, from the native tradition and from the UFO count that people see them zooming out of the mountain and into the mountain. So it's a big one. And of course, so are the sand dunes. Thoth likened the situation. He said, think of the Ark, the sacred On in Challenger, which he calls Crest in the Stone, as being the master computer. And think of the Grail logos now in Mount Blanca as being a light program that is now attuning into the On. So the On is accepting the light program, but the light program itself is on this little USB port inside Mount Challenger. I'm sorry, not Mount Challenger, Mount Blanca. Okay, so I saw the night before all of this took place an incredible Merkabah light ship, I guess you could say. And this is the element that is going to be working a great deal now in the San Luis Valley with these dynamics. Because, well, to say that it was the actual transporter vehicle for the energy field that we're calling the Grail logos that was placed into Mount Blanca from Utenberg. It was the actual transporter. And it's like a double star tetrahedron that is, its outer shell is like very, very shiny silver, like the most shiniest silver you can imagine. And the surface of it, though, is not smooth. It's got little tiny pyramids, like little pyramids all over it, with the top of the pyramids is facing outward. The point of the pyramid is facing outward. So you got these little pyramids all over it, like scales on a dragon, only they're pyramid scales. And around it was like a thin silver slice, if you took a blade off of an ice skate, and you just molded it around the whole thing, but it's not touching it. There's a distance between the actual object of the ship or the Merkabah and the skate rim itself, and it's like that thin rim, but it's not touching it. It's just floating around it that I could see, unless it's an invisible something that's holding it on there. But I didn't think so. It's a force field. And out of that comes these little sparks when it's acting. These little sparks are coming out of it, but the sparks are like they're in water. When you look at them, it's like a reflection of them. They're morphing like in water. That's the best way I can describe it. It's absolutely beautiful, like a Christmas decoration or something. And so when I saw it actually discharge the field into the mountain, it actually went through the sand dunes, because it's going to the mountain beneath part of Blanca under the sand dunes. And so that's how I saw this actually occur when we were doing the process. So here is the skull that I have ordered. It's not my hand. I haven't gotten it yet. The person is holding it, it's advertising it, and that is the skull. Of course, it's not purely clear, but that doesn't matter. It has fibers in it. It has things that can hold the energy. And I cannot afford a purely clear skull, but this one is fine. He said, this is the one. So if he says this is the one, this is the one. And here it is from the forward look. It's really a very attractive skull, actually. But whatever it is, it's the one that works. So that's the one I got. Okay, wait a minute. I just got mixed up. I'm going to stop the recording again for just a moment, or pause it rather. Okay, now on Gaia TV, which is a subscription site, so I'm not playing this whole video, but it's on the Deep Space series. And the Deep Space series is actually being transferred over to YouTube. I mean, I found a whole lot of the series over there, but this one I'm going to show you just a few tiny little clips from, like a little trailer, has not reached YouTube yet, but I imagine that it will, because all the others are lined up there. It's very new. But it hasn't been released yet, and I'm, tiptoeing into showing you just a little bit of it, just a few little scenes that are so necessary for understanding what we're doing here. And there's going to be some distorted sound, because I'm on Zoom, and Zoom does not handle well third-party viewings. That is, looking at it, actually second-party viewings, from inside Zoom. And the music will be very distorted if there's any. So I'm sorry about that. But I don't want it to be really clear, because I shouldn't be sharing it, I guess, you know, and I'm just sharing these little tiny little pieces in a very distorted sound. So I encourage you to watch this video. You have to be a Gaia subscriber to get it on Gaia. It may appear on YouTube in a few weeks or months or whatever, probably sooner than that. But right now it's on this subscription portal. So I'm being very careful what I share with you. But there's just this tiny little bit that I want to share. So there's a few pieces. So we're going to start just with the intro here. If I can get it going. This is on the San Luis Valley.
About 50 miles away from Dulce, New Mexico, as the crow flies, is the largest and highest valley in North America. Called the San Luis Valley, it sits at over 8,000 feet above sea level. The valley has been known for a long time to be a place where many strange events occur. It has been rumored that there are portals to other dimensions in the valley. What's going on in this mysterious valley?
The San Luis Valley is in south central Colorado, and it actually, geologically, it extends down to Taos, New Mexico. So it does actually go below the Colorado-New Mexico border.
I'm going to be skipping around here, so you'll be just listening to little bits and pieces. Here we go.
UFOs, Bigfoot, poltergeist activity, whatever. And often, strangely enough, and a lot of people probably watching know this, all those things at once.
We describe it as the playground of the paranormal because not only are the deposits just enormously vast there, but you have daily non-stop paranormal activity occurring.
There's a lot that's unusual there, and the geophysical properties, I think, is one of the most important things to look at. It's one of the few areas where you'll have large pockets of magnetic energy, maximum field strength and minimum field strength right next to one another. And when you have that close proximity of minimum and maximum field strength, it sets up vortices of electromagnetic energy. And where you have the minimum intensity areas, you also have intermittent layers of clay, sand, and water. And that creates a perfect natural battery. So you have a variety of gravitic lows, the close proximity of field strength.
Portals are actually different areas. They're also described as vortexes. Most of the portals that we've gone to examine are all in places that the indigenous people hold sacred.
Okay, I'm just pausing that. I wanted to show that because it's really important to understand why these things are being moved into here. Of course, it's not the only place on the planet that has incredible things going on. Burg does as well. But it's also the crown chakra of the Ascension Temple. And that makes it unique. That part makes it unique. And certainly many sites that have analyzed places all over the world, including Shasta and everything, is still putting this as the top spot of paranormal phenomena, as they call it. But the main thing that I wanted to show you is the unique properties of the geophysical zone here are really, really unique because it is the crown chakra of the Ascension Temple, and it has to have those properties present for that aspect of it. But of course, it has a great history to it, and the sand dunes are even unique for a greater reason. And I've addressed this before, but I really need to address it now because the skull with its logos is, under the sand dunes, in the mountain, but under the sand dunes. And so when I first came here in my previous life, no, not my previous life, but in the 1990s, and I lived here then, I was shown and told by Thoth that the sand dunes were created by a comet from the future. Well, it was not an accidental comet. It was an energy experience from the future, so to speak. And as such, the sand in the dunes were instantly created, and they did not come from here. I mean, the whole thing was from a future experience. And so I did not know anything that you're going to hear on this video that I'm going to show you this little piece of at the time. I did learn about it just, since I've been back. I saw another video on YouTube of Chris O'Brien, whom I knew when he used to live here. When we lived here, Simeon and I knew him then, not really well, but we visited in his home once, I remember. But anyway, from this video that Chris had made rather recently, a few years ago, that I saw on YouTube, but I saw it since I've been back now, this last year, they were talking about this, and I was going, oh my God, it verifies. Well, it doesn't prove it, but it sure almost proves what I was given about the comet from the future creating the sand dunes instantly. So I'm going to find that on this video, and I want to share that with you as well. Well, on our way to finding this part about the sand dunes that I wanted to share with you, here's another little bit.
It's so isolated. You have to understand it's the world's largest alpine valley. It's completely surrounded and ringed by mountains. It's roughly football shaped. You have the Sangre de Cristo, is the longest continuous mountain range in North America, going up the east side, which is also the largest volcanic thrust fault in the interior of the United States. It goes from the Gulf of Mexico to Leadville, and it follows Sangre's, or the middle portion of it. And then, of course, the San Juan Mountains are on the west side, and it's completely surrounded by mountains. And interestingly enough, it's radar invisible below 18,000 feet. There's no monitoring of the airspace below that particular altitude. I mean, pretty much any type of paranormal phenomenon that you can stick your finger on has occurred there, including crop circles in the early 70s.
It's the most secret. In fact, there's 4 different indigenous tribes that describe the San Luis Valley as being their Garden of Eden. The holiest mountain there being Mount Blanca, which is a 14,000.
Whoop. Sorry, I didn't mean to turn that off. Let me go again.
1,000-foot mountain peak, which some of the Indians claim actually have crystal skulls buried on, which is fascinating. But it was in that valley where they described what's called the Sipapu, or the place of emergence. This was a hole in the ground that they literally crawled up into this existence. And while they were down there, they claimed the ant people were taking care of them.
It's interesting. The San Luis Valley, which is where Creston is, for about 20 years, we've done CE5 expeditions there. And dating back, certainly the Native American times, and old ranchers from the early 19, they reported seeing unusual phenomena and objects that come up out of the earth and go into space and all kinds of things. Now, when I first started going there in 93, 24 years ago, we immediately had amazing contact experiences. And I also noticed that there was a magnetic field anomaly there, where the delta, the change in magnetic field, is very dramatic in that area. And that seems to have some effect on facilitating, or at least having expressed that we're seeing it with the naked eye, extraterrestrial phenomena. And so there's also the 3rd largest aquifer in North America there underneath this valley. And there is a great deal of evidence that there is an ancient ET presence within the aquifer.
Okay, I'm going to stop it there. This whole video is fascinating, and I'm going to put a link of it below the video, this video that I'm going to be embedding, my video. And if you're a Gaia TV subscriber, you can watch this whole video and much more. And I highly recommend Gaia TV. And if you're not, and you don't want to be, this video will probably turn up on YouTube before too long. And if I'll watch for it, if it does, I'll probably go and put a link to it over there for future viewing. But I still haven't gotten to the part of the sand dunes that I want to share with you. So I'm going to keep looking for it here. Okay, let's try this part here.
One of the places where that occurs almost on a daily basis is the San Luis Valley.
Because of the conditions that you find there, you'll occasionally see piezoelectric discharges from the Sangres. The Sangres are filled with negative spaces where quartz obviously has grown. And there's some rumors even that Nikola Tesla came there at one point to investigate the discharging of the piezoelectric energy. I have actually seen it on a couple of occasions late at night super cold winter nights, very low single-digit humidity, and you'll see these flashes of light that come out of the mountains and go up into the air, and they separate from the mountain and go up into the air. And on 2 occasions I've seen it. It's really rare, but it does occur.
And so what you have is a scenario by which there are areas like this where the fields being generated are so powerful that they're causing this nonstop interaction with another dimension. And the only thing that can explain the wide array of paranormal activity taking place is the fact that these fields exist because they exist in a very small geographic area to one another.
Okay, well, that's the physical reason, but of course there is an ultra reason, so to speak, that allows this area to be as it is. Our planet didn't just, we look at it from a geological standpoint, and it's like, oh, well, the Telluric plates moved, and this happened, and then there was the Ice Age, and this is, but it's all a part of a greater program of light. Not some ETs managing us or even ultras managing us. They're managing us. They're helping it. The ultras and the luminaries, they're helping us move with the program, but the program is, well, you could call it God. But it's not, it's a source. It's the ultra, not even ultra, the supra beingness of the realm we live in. And it's intelligent. And it's moving us toward a divine plan that we keep trying to interrupt and mess up and do things to, but it's still moving us toward there. So I still haven't gotten to the part with the sand dunes, and I'm getting there. The video just said, I'm just going to freeze frame it here and tell you what it said, that the military is slowly buying up these areas where these portals exist, not only here in the valley, and they're putting a no trespassing sign on them. And yeah, but they can't stop what's coming, what's happening and what's coming.
Towering over the San Luis Valley is Mount Blanca. This is the 4th highest mountain in Colorado. The mountain, which frequently is snow-covered all year long, is one of the most sacred mountains to the local Native Americans. Right below Mount Blanca is the Sand Dunes National Monument. The Sand Dunes Monument is one of the largest sand dunes in the Americas. Today, there are rumors swirling that there's a base of some kind inside the mountain. Some say it's a military base. Others say it's alien. Either way, Mount Blanca has so many UFO sightings that there's even a UFO watchtower where viewers can come and watch the mountain.
Sacred mountain of the east to the Dene, actually Navajo. Cisnagini, it's the place where all thought originates. It's where creation occurs. And then it goes around to the north to Hesperus, to the San Francisco Peaks in the west, and then Mount Taylor in the south. Those are the 4 cardinal mountains of the southwest. Blanca is the stories that I have uncovered from all the way back in the pioneer days to just recently. We've had Bigfoot reports. We've had spectral Indians attacking campers around campfires. The old King Ranch, the upper cabin. A guy went by on horseback, but he would have had to have been on a horse 20 feet tall.
Now, the other thing is that the sacred mountain of the east is Blanca Peak, and all the Native American tribes would gather there. We started going there in 93, 94, and we have a
I'm going to pause it there because it goes on, and I don't want to trespass on the whole video here. So let's see, we're going to keep going. Whoops, trying to get it started again here. Okay, let's try it again here.
This object came out of the mountain, and it was like liquid blue, and it came down and wrapped around us. And then a rectangular box materialized. A woman almost sat on it. You could do an...
Okay, that I wanted to share that part because the object that I saw was not liquid blue, but there was a plasma-like field that was causing those sparkly things to look like that. I mean, it was not blue, but it was like plasma-like coming out of it.
Blanca. I mean, all this stuff is centered around this particular mountain. And we've had everything from people reporting white buffaloes at high mountain lakes at almost 12,000 feet. In 1966, 2 hunters saw a platypus in one of the high mountain lakes there. Back in 65, 66, into 67, there were reports of these small 10 to 12 foot scout ships that were flying in and out of Blanca and chasing people in the highway, you know, broad daylight, and dive bombing cars going to the Great Sand Dunes. And of course, the Snippy case happened right at the base of there. And the mountain is overlooking some of the meadows that have some of the earliest known evidence of humans in North America. When they did a study of the Great Sand Dunes, which is the most mysterious sand dune desert in the world, it's by far the highest altitude desert, sand dune desert. It's 700.
My apologies. Just when I finally got to the sand dunes part, I had a coughing spell, and I had to turn it off. Let's start that part again.
Snippy case happened right at the base of there, and the mountain is overlooking some of the meadows that have some of the earliest known evidence of humans in North America. When they did a study of the Great Sand Dunes, which is the most mysterious sand dune desert in the world, it's by far the highest altitude desert, sand dune desert. It's 700 feet high sand dunes, 49 square miles of sand. The sand does not conform to any of the silica in the valley. It's a completely different color. It has completely different constituent elements. After getting to know the personnel out there, after 10 years, the chief geologist finally told me they don't know how it got there. And I said, well, why do you tell people that prevailing westerly winds are blowing sand from the old Rio Grande and piling up in the crook of the mountain? He goes, well, it's got to tell them something. But the most mind-blowing thing about the sand dunes is they did a core sample test, and they were drilling down in the very center of the dune field, and when they got to the bottom of the dunes, at the 700 feet down, they hit wood. And there's a covered forest that's covered by the dunes. And so you have organic material. What can you do? You can date it. So they carbon-14 dated the wood. It's only 11,000 years old. So the dunes have been there 11,000 years. Now, how do you have a pile of sand, 49 square miles, 700 feet high, that's been piled up in less than 12,000 years? I was a geology minor in school. I know a little bit about the subject, and it is absolutely inconceivable that amount of sand, even with hurricane force winds every day, could pile up that much sand in such a short period of time. So I had a physicist friend of mine. He called me up all excited one day, and he goes, I figured out how the dunes got there. I said, what?
Okay, well, this is a story about it being the ant people. I'm going to skip over that, but there's more. So let me see if I can find the part that I'm really wanting to share with you here. More. All right, here we go.
It's the largest pile of pure glass on the planet. It's 98% pure silica. And if you look at any other sand on beaches and stuff, most of it's silica. That's the primary constituent element. You can see lightning between dunes. There's supposedly a herd of these web-footed horses that have these huge hooves that have been grown out, and they're like paddles, and they're able to gallop through the sand. The pioneers reported them. Well, there's tons of caverns. Supposedly, there's a military satellite system called Dumpster. I forget what the acronym stands for, but I've heard versions that it can map 500 feet into the Earth's bedrock, and I've heard other versions that can go as much as a half a mile. Now, I don't know what kind of technology it would take to have that capability, but based on the research that I did, it went operational in the mid-90s, and the first place that they mapped was the Giza Plateau. The second place they mapped was the Yucatan Peninsula, and the third place they mapped was the southern Sangre de Cristo Mountains. So it kind of makes me wonder, maybe there's some element of the military, maybe government, Department of Defense somewhere that knows something about what's going on underground in the Rocky Mountains.
Okay, I still haven't found that last little piece, but I'm just going to tell it to you. And that is that they did an analysis on the actual silica, and it's not from the valley. I mean, it's definitely not from the valley. It's a whole other thing, and they don't know where it came from. So let's see if there's any final thing before I conclude with this part. And so, where does that leave us with this? I know this is getting to be a long video, and I apologize for that. I try to keep them shorter or cut them up in pieces, but this one I just couldn't make different parts of. We need to just go through the whole thing here that I have up to this point. And we're getting close to the end, but I still have some things to share. Let me put that into my own perspective. And so I'm going to pause for a moment. One thing it's important to understand when you're seeing all this phenomena stuff, white buffalo appearing in platypuses and, in astral Native Americans and all of this, that's the nature of the area. Because the portals are open like that, you're going to have flashing in and out of all kinds of things. What we're talking about is a very specific aspect of that, and that has to do with the highest vibrational presence that is operating through this valley, that is working with the sacred On, and before the sacred On even came into this thresholding chamber, working in preparation for that, as acting as a guidance system through the crown chakra, the ascension the ascension temple, the ascension grid, for the work that is to be done to move us into the new Earth Star consciousness. So we have all this phenomena swirling around because that's because of the nature of this area. But we have the highest program of light centralizing the focus for what we're working with, coming through and aiding us to understand, to work with these properties as we do so as a conscious service. That wasn't exactly a good sentence, but I was trying my best. So the addition of the Grail logos housed within this Dweller Templar Skull is only the next step. Thoth has shown me that there will be several, what he's calling treasures, placed in the mountains in this valley, surrounding this valley. And not a lot of them, but there will be more, a few more. And the On, the sacred On, serves as the master computer. And all of these treasures are light programs. This is the best way to describe it so that we can understand it. Obviously, there's much more to it than that description, but that will suffice for now. So it's a whole project, and this is part of the Osiris Arising Project. For us, the Osiris Arising Project is a term that Thoth gave me for my work with this, and those who feel guided to participate with me in this, the Sholar, and to some degree, the Templars in the valley here. So that's that little project. But the greater project, of course, is beyond all of that. So within the Osiris Arising Project, this is what we're working with. Remember, it started with just getting some of the hosting skulls, and our Sholar were working with those. They were setting up an energy pattern for this presence. They weren't working at it. They were simply offering themselves to do that, and it's still happening. When I say working, consciously working, this isn't about all of us running around like busy bees doing things. There are a few things we do, like the other day, but it's not busy, busy, busy. It's a program of light that's working on a higher level of experience, but we are acting as vehicles for that in certain instances as all of this comes together. So in conclusion, what I do know at this point, because there's going to be more, obviously, is that when I actually received the hosting skull for this Templar, I will be going to the sand dunes, and I haven't been back there since I moved back. And there will be others with me, and we will be going to take the skull and not bury it and leave it, but sort of bury it, you know, put the sand over it a little bit and go through a ceremony there, connecting it more securely, shall we say, more certainly, to the Templar dweller skull, now housed within Mount Blanca and under the sand dunes. We're not going to the spot it entered because that would be very close to the actual mountain. I couldn't get over there. Remember, this is a vast area, 45 miles worth of sand or something like that. I'm saying that from memory, and my memory is not that good, but it's a lot of sand and a lot of space. So there are areas on those sand dunes that the tourists aren't walking all over. When you see pictures of tourists walking on the sand dunes, that's just right up near the parking lot, you know, and some more adventurous go a little bit further. But there's vast areas of sand dunes here that people are not trampling over. And remember, it is in a zone that's below radar, that the radar can't get into, I guess you could say. So a lot could go on back there on the dunes. Now, when I saw the light transfer being made from this Merkabah ship that I saw, or vehicle, or Merkabah, whatever, and it transferred the skull and the logos containing logos through the sand and into the mountain below. I saw what was materialized around that point, and there was no hole made or anything, but around the point where it entered the sand, and I knew it, they were Andara crystals being formed. Small ones, when I say small, from a golf ball size to pebble size, you know, large pebble, rock size. And they were formed around there of different colors, and they were luminous and beautiful. And I'm not going to go into what Andara crystals are. I'm hoping you know, but you can go on I was the one that brought through the original name Andara crystal from my sources and gave the original information on them. And so you can go to my site of Spirit Mythos, just Google Spirit Mythos, and then in the little search box, if you can see it, because some computers can no longer see it because it's such an ancient site that some of the properties don't work on some of the computers. But you could even Google Spirit Mythos and Dara crystals, and you could come up with the information. I've also placed it on another site. I've placed it on the Crystalline Matrix. If you go to my Crystalline Matrix WordPress site, there's a page on Andara crystals in the pages section, and you can find it there. But nevertheless, these Andara crystals were formed around this. So I know that Andara crystals are very important for this whole programming. And I know they connect very strongly to all the dweller crystal skulls. I will just put a link to that Andara crystal information where I embed this video so you can find it easily, because there's going to be more about the Andara connection to all of this as we proceed with this new level of work in the Osiris Arising Project. I believe that's all. I'm almost hesitant to close down because then I'm going to think of something, but I believe that's it. And we certainly have been going on here for a long enough time. Of course, there will be other videos on this topic to share with you. So thank you for listening, and until next time.